Hi, now we want to discuss about cellular principles in biomedical engineering. So we study building blocks of our human body, cells and tissues. You can ask, hey, I'm a biomedical engineer. Why do I need to learn about cells? So for example, I have a background in mechanical engineering. I'm designing the new prosthetic hip joints. So then you are dealing with a pretty big bones. Then what's the matter with this? However, if you think about the inside the bone is a collagen made out of collagen, but inside the bone, there are cells which keeps creating a new bones. And there are also cells which are actually carving out, eating up the bones. So you need to know, understand at the cellular level, even molecular level, to understand what's going on and to design a better prosthetic device. So in this a simple example, we need to get down to the cellular and molecular aspects of the living system. So the cell is a basic functional unit. It's a building block of our human body. So let's consider about this university you are in. So you, a student, or me, instructor, are individuals. So we are the smallest basic unit of this body. And what about you guys, students, or me, faculties? So accumulation of a similar type of single individuals forms faculty, students, or staffs. So the role of students are to learn and performing research, and faculty teaching, and staffs supporting the system. And when these faculty, students, staffs are put together, so we can form a department such as biomedical science and engineering, or school of life science, let's say. And these performed a specific function. And these schools and departments put together, forming a university, an entity, a system. So likewise, in our body, cells are the smallest basic unit of the body. For example, in the muscle, like myocyte, which means muscle cell. And when accumulation of these myocytes to form a specific functional unit, in this case, muscle cells form a muscle tissue, which will exert a contraction. Okay, that's the tissue. And these multiple types of tissue can be put together to form a physiological function. So for example, this muscle tissue forming an organ, which is a heart. So heart has a specific physiological function, basically pumping oxygenated blood and also gathering deoxygenated blood and sending it to the lungs for oxygenation. And so that organs put together, these various organs can form a living body, which we call as a system. Now, let's discuss about a primary tissue types. So here's an example here. So let's consider our arm and their surface. There's a surface, are multiple layers of cells, which is called epithelial tissue. The role is lining the surfaces in the body. And the second, for contraction or for movement, we need a muscle tissue, which is made up of muscle fibers, which can contract. And to move this, we need to send a signal, which is electrical. So there are specialized cells with projections that transmit this electrical turning on signals, which we call nervous tissue. And there are the rest of them are putting together these we call collectively as connective tissue. So for example, and this inside the body, under the skin, there's a loose connective tissue acting as a padding under skin and elsewhere. What about the bone? So bone is composed of a lot of bones and cartilage. These can be considered as a connective tissue made up of cells in a hard and stiff, a lot of extracellular matrix. And even you can think of blood as a connective tissue made up of cells in a liquid matrix. So all these connective tissues are related, composed of material or tissue between cells. There's more specialized structures are embedded, and this is called a matrix. So collection of cells of a similar type as a tissue, we talk about 4 kinds of tissue. So just look at this again. So movement, we need a muscle tissue here like this. And for communication, initiating and transmitting coordinated cell-cell signals, which allows these final movement is done by this nervous tissue. And the surface of our body or surface of organs, cavities, and these required protection or absorbing and secreting in and outside of the tissue, and that's organized into a sheets that cover the body surfaces in and out. That specialized tissue is called epithelial tissue. I'm going to get back to this again. And support and framework with rich extracellular material or matrix for mechanical strength and anchoring against adjacent tissues are called connective tissues. So let's bring an example so that we can understand about the organ, which is collection of 2 or more primary tissues which are organized to perform a physiological function. For example, let's think about stomach. So the stomach's physiological functions chemically disintegrate the foods for further digestion with enzymes and hydrochloric acid. So here's the stomach, and what are the functions of tissues which is composing a stomach, which is an organ? So stomach has also a muscle tissue. You can see here a lot of smooth muscle tissue that will mix stomach content. And for this, you need a nervous input. So nervous tissue will coordinate this muscular action. In fact, stomach has to code when it functions, it should have a coordinated action, like even heart together. And there's a lining of the stomach surface. That's here columnar epithelium. You see, it looks like columns, and that's an inner lining. And with the enzymes, which is supposed to disintegrate food, we have to make sure these enzymes should not eat up the stomach surface itself. So this epithelium should make sure the enzyme doesn't eat themselves, ourselves. So there's they secrete many things to line, to coat the inner side of the stomach. And all this need to bind these different types of tissue into a unit. That's done by this loose connective tissue. Let's take a look at a cross-section of the stomach. And this pinkish, blue and pinkish stain is famous one called hemotoxylin and eosin staining, or simply H&E staining. You can see darker ones are usually means dark bluish ones are nucleus, and pinkish ones represent proteins, so that pathologists can see and distinguish. So because the real tissue, maybe it's thin, you cannot see this contrast. So let's look at this. You see multiple pits over here. So this is how we can increase the surface area, and that lining cells here are called epithelium. You can see the nucleus are quite lined well over here on the lower side, and even these cross sections. And the middle one, you can see a muscle, smooth muscle tissues as well.